We're going to continue my article series. Opportunity is almost everything. This is the third part of it. We're going to be talking about wide receivers today. So let's jump right into it. First thing I want to talk about, we always talk about the same four things when I do these articles. I did these articles last year, continued them over into about the midway point this year. So we're going to talk about the top 5 of each position, so wide receiver today. And we're going to be talking about total opportunities, opportunities per snap, fantasy points per opportunity, and then at the end, I'm going to compare salary to a little bit of opportunity as well. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at the top 20 in terms of fantasy points for all the dynasty owner wide receivers to try to limit it a little bit there. So first up, let's take a look at total opportunities. I'll share my screen here with you so you can see. And these are the top 5 of the top 20 in total opportunities. And what do you notice there? No real surprises. Maybe DJ Moore might be the biggest surprise. Hill, Kupp, Adams, Debo, all pretty understandable. They're vital to their teams, at least, passing success. But so each of these 4 are in the top 5 wide receivers. The only one left out is DJ Moore. In fact, DJ Moore has the 3rd most opportunities, as you can see here, but he's wide receiver 14 on the season. So there's some sort of discrepancy. And this is one of the big things I like to look at when I do these articles and find out stuff like this. So the question is how? How is Moore have over 100 opportunities, but it's less than 140 fantasy points to show for it? In comparison, you have a player like, let's just say, Davante Adams. He only has 98 opportunities, but he has 160 fantasy points, so more on both sides. So my answer is 2 parts. First of all, is the fact that DJ Moore has a very poor catch percentage. It's 60% on the season, so not great. He received 95 targets this season, and he's only converted 57 of them into receptions. Second is the fact that his main quarterback for the season, probably not for the rest of the season, but before I wrote this article, was Sam Darnold. He had an abysmal completion percentage of just under 60%. So you got a 60% completion percentage quarterback, and then you have a receiver who's getting 60% reception percentage. It's just a recipe for disaster. The bad news is that I don't see it getting much better. We're going to have a combination of Cam Newton and P.J. Walker for the rest of the season for DJ Moore. So we know the talent's there. We know the opportunities there, obviously. I just showed you that. But there's just been a disconnect, and that's been the main part of the problem for DJ Moore throughout his entire career is the quarterback play. You put him on, I would say 20 different teams, and he's a superstar. Maybe not the number 1 on a few teams, but he's going to be much better positioned than he is now. Disappointing. I don't see that getting any better, at least its outlook for this season. We'll see, what happens next year. But next up, I want to look at opportunities per snap. So this is another way I try to get a little bit closer to a little bit raw efficiencies. And I'm going to take a look at last year as well. So let me scroll down here so you can see last year. These are last year's numbers when I did this same article. So what you can see, you have Davante Adams, Deontay, Stephon Diggs, Keenan Allen, Calvin Ridley. So the main thing I want you to look at here is what I'm going to show you next for the top 5 is opportunities per snap percentage. So Davante Adams was at 20%. So that means that every time he was on the field taking a snap, he got an opportunity 20% of the time. Impressive, obviously. I mean, he led Deontay by right about 2 percentage points. So if we go down and we take a look at what we had this year, for this, I don't have Debo's or Cooper Kupp's snaps for the Monday night game. I'm doing this article a little bit before those numbers came out, so I'm just taking that based off of the 9 games, up through week 9, not including week 10. So the opportunities per snap shouldn't change all that much, while the fantasy points would probably change a little bit, but it'll be right around the same spot either way. And what you can see is we're right about the same point we were last year. Tyreek Hill a little bit better than Davante was doing last year. At 21% of the time, he's getting an opportunity when he's on the field taking a snap. And other players, no real surprises here. You got DJ Moore in there as well. So he's getting the opportunities. He's getting the opportunities when he's on the field. It's just he's not able to convert those, except for 60% of the time, which is not ideal for a wide receiver. And we keep looking down, and we're going to look at fantasy points for opportunity. So this is when you compare the fantasy points compared to how many opportunities that player is getting. A real good efficiency metric, at least as far as I've seen. And we go down and we see DeAndre Hopkins is leading number 1. Not that this is misleading, but I was kind of surprised when I saw this. And then I had to go back and recheck the stats and make sure. So Hopkins only had 49 opportunities this season. That's rushing opportunities and targets. But he has 125.6 fantasy points, which is good for 2.56 fantasy points per opportunity. So 0.56 fantasy points every time he gets a target or he doesn't have any rushes this year. If he had any rushes, that would be included as well. And that's just an amazing efficiency. Really, like I said, I didn't expect it just because I got this feeling in my head, and I think we'll do that. Hopkins having a down year, and he for sure is volume-wise. But I chalked it up to a few different things. First, he's missed 2 games in the season, last 2 games, hamstring injury. Obviously, that's not going to help anything as far as, full volume goes. But the other thing is that when he's been getting his opportunities, he's converting touchdowns at a very high rate. So he doesn't need a lot of opportunities to score a lot of fantasy points. In fact, I wrote this in my article. Go ahead and read it. Hopkins is wide receiver 20 on the season. Main reason for this, like I said, he missed 2 games. But the biggest reason is that 33% of his fantasy points have come through touchdowns. He has 7 touchdowns on the season. You compare that with players like Cooper Kupp, who we know is having a historic season, especially for a Rams receiver. Historic season. He only has 23% of his fantasy points from touchdowns. A player like Tyreek Hill, just under 23%, so right at that 23% fantasy points from touchdowns. And you can look at this 2 ways. So I tend to look at the second way that I'm going to mention here, but someone could say, well, this is great, because when or if he starts, he's getting more volume. He should return a top 10 wide receiver. So as he plays more, that volume should continue. Possible. I think I've shown throughout the past couple of years doing these articles that an increase in volume usually leads to a decrease in efficiency, but almost always. So I think the more likely argument, which I would probably tend to side with, would be, what if the volume does not increase much and his touchdown rate cannot be sustained? Because that is an amazing touchdown rate. Let's see, I think he has 35 receptions, around 35 receptions. Anyway, 49 opportunities, and of those 49 opportunities, he has 7 touchdowns. That's a very high rate that he's getting touchdowns on opportunities. I don't want to say it can't continue because he's obviously a superstar player, but especially with the injury too, how is that going to limit some of his efficiency? So I digress. Let's finally talk about some salary compared to opportunity. And this is kind of one of the ways that I mix everything together here at the end. So let's take a look. I combined the top 10 here, and as you can see, 5 are still all going to be the same. But then we look down further. So what do we see when we split all of these players by salary? What we see is that we have a pretty much even split. We have 5 wide receivers who are top tier salary and 5 that are kind of bottom tier. The 5 in the bottom tier are DK Metcalf, Ja'Marr Chase, Deebo Samuel, Marquise Brown, and Michael Pittman. Those are all great values. Fantasy points for opportunity wise, when they're on the field, they're getting the opportunities, they're getting the fantasy points. But also in terms of salary, they have a very cheap salary, at least in the case of Metcalf, Deebo, and I'd throw as well. Ja'Marr Chase is kind of on the edge. He's a rookie, so I included him, but right at $7.5 million fringe there. But anyway, like I talked about with my other 2 articles, quarterbacks and running backs, I expect one of these 5 players to finish as the value of the year for the wide receiver position. And this is a really good metric to try to figure out who that's going to be. So I'll repeat them again. DK Metcalf, Ja'Marr Chase. Chase is going to be a tough one just because his salary is so much higher than the others. But DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, Marquise Brown, Michael Pittman. At this point in the season, I would put my money on Deebo just because he's been on fire. If anybody has seen what he's been doing. Like I said, I don't have the full opportunities and snaps put up, but I will have that on the article for him and Kupp whenever it comes out. Just wasn't a little bit under the crunch to put this video out today. So amazing what Deebo's done, 195.6 fantasy points. I look for him to be the value of the year in terms of wide receiver when it's all said and done. So I appreciate everybody listening. As always, go ahead and read my article that pairs with this. Follow us at Dynasty Owner on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter at Dynasty Jerk. And just go ahead and subscribe on YouTube as well. It really helps us out. I appreciate everybody watching, reading, and take care.